Belimo Room Sensors, the foundation of comfort, presented by Eddie Kelly. We really appreciate you joining us today. My name is Ron Pilkowitz, and I will be your moderator today. Because we know you will want to watch this webinar again, it will be recorded and posted on Belimo's YouTube site. We will have a question and answer session at the end of this presentation, as we'd like to hear from you. So at any time, I invite you to type your question into the question box, and I will read them aloud during the question and answer session. Eddie will answer as many questions as we have time for, otherwise you will receive an answer via email. If you are having any difficulty with this webinar, please type me a note in the chat box and I will try to assist you. Please note that this presentation is available as a handout and you are able to download it if you'd like, and we also have included a brochure and a flyer. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Eddie.
All right, thanks Ron, sorry for cutting you off there. Thanks everyone for hopping on here today. Hope everyone's well and healthy during this pretty crazy time we're living in. Hopefully this webinar can bring you some sort of, normalcy during this quarantine period. So we've got a new product range coming out over the next couple months. So we're going to be promoting the room sensors on this webinar. As Ron said, there will be a question and answer session at the end, and we also have those attachments ready for you as well. So you can download those whenever you're ready. My name is Eddie Kelly. I'm a product specialist for the sensors team within Belimo Americas. Again, we'll have a question and answer session towards the end. If we don't get to it right away, I will get a printout of everything typed in. So I'll be sure to get to you as soon as I can. All right, so without further ado, firstly, I wanted to include here an outline to go over what we'll be talking about over the next 20 minutes or so. This first slide coming up next, I'll be giving you guys a very high level overview of the different types of room sensors we will be releasing. As you can see on the picture on the right here, there's three main types of room sensors we'll be releasing. We'll be releasing two types of passive room sensors and one active room sensor. I guess more so categories. So the next three slides after this, after the overview slide, we'll be going into details behind each one of the configurations, whether it be passive with Setpoint, or the active configuration. Our active room sensors also have NFC capabilities associated with them for installation, commissioning, and troubleshooting. So I'll be incorporating a slide here that goes into the details behind the capabilities that you'll get through this NFC configuration. Beyond the NFC slide, as I'm not sure if you're familiar with our duct and pipe sensor line, but a lot of the sensors that we design here at Belimo incorporate different features when it comes to ease of installation. We really like to try to, make the install as user-friendly as possible and as quickly as possible. So we've also incorporated some installation features with our room sensors product line as well here. I'll be finishing up this presentation going over some future releases with our room sensors, as well as a couple apps that are coming out. And then, of course, as mentioned a few times already, we'll be finishing up with a question and answer session. All right, so overview-wise, again, in general, we're releasing three main types of room sensors. These room sensors are going to be, I guess one type is a passive output room sensor. The second type is going to be passive with a set point. So it's the exact same thing as the regular passive sensors, except we have an added set point for added temperature control. And then the third type, again, the third category is an active room sensor. We're going to have selectable outputs on this. The outputs are voltage, current, as well as our Belimo specific MP bus communication protocol. All the voltages are going to be field selectable through this NFC app. Again, I'll go into this into detail, but the NFC app basically, the different outputs you could choose from would be 0 to 5 volt, 0 to 10 volt, 2 to 10 volts, and of course the MP bus that is specific for Belimo. The three types of measurements that our room sensors will be able to measure are going to be temperature, humidity, and CO2. The active sensors have a combination of all three of those measurements. So you can have an active sensor with just temperature, you can have an active sensor with temperature and humidity, or you can have an active sensor with all three, temperature, humidity, and CO2, basically three different part numbers. Again, the active units are NFC configurable. One big thing to note here, all of our room sensors, every part number we have is available with the Belimo logo, which is shown in the image here, or without the logo, a plain room sensor. We have been getting lots of requests on customization and customer logos. Rest assured, this is in development. We don't have any set release dates for customization on these sensors, but is absolutely in process and will be coming in the near future. So again, these are going to be available throughout May and June. The first release of room sensors in May will include all of our active units, and on the passive side, it will include the NTC 10K2 and NTC 10K3 outputs, both with the Setpoint and without the Setpoint dial. Following this release, then we'll also come out with our PT1000 versions, as well as our NTC 20K versions a few weeks after in June. All right, so jumping into the details here behind the sensors themselves. So this first main product line here we want to go over is the actual passive temperature sensors. So we have these in 4 different flavors coming out. Again, as mentioned before, these will be available with a PT1000 signal, an NTC 10K2, a 10K3, and a 20K signal. Again, the 10K2 and 10K3 signals will be the first released. A few weeks afterwards, we'll be releasing the PT1000 as well as the 20K sensors. So one big thing with room sensors in general, the room sensors are measuring the actual occupied space, the space itself where the people are residing in. So accuracy becomes extremely important in that aspect. With our PT1000 sensor, we're at plus or minus 0.5 degrees Fahrenheit on the accuracy side. And then on the NTC thermistors, we're down even below half a degree Fahrenheit into plus minus 0.35 degrees F, which is great accuracy values for, of course, the room type measurements. One big feature that we're pushing as well for all of our passive sensors, including the set points, a manual override button is included as standard. So what this manual override button can do, just as an application example, if you have a BMS system that has certain, I guess, zones or certain rooms that are unoccupied and on standby mode or on a timer or something like that, if you have an office member, kind of come in early before working hours or maybe a cleaning agent come in after hours, they're able to walk into this room, hit this manual override button. The override shorts out the thermistor and sends a signal to the BMS system to kind of, I guess, wake the room up and really try to condition that room itself based on its programming. All of our sensors have been designed and engineered to be as visually appealing as possible. Room sensors are directly in front of our customers. They're in the room themselves. They're not hidden in the ducts. They're not hidden in the ceilings or behind walls. So it was of the utmost importance to us to really make these, aesthetically pleasing and visually pleasing as much as possible. So included in that is a very slim and narrow design. These passive sensors are only 12 millimeters thick. So, and I believe they're one of the slimmest sensors on the market. So we're really trying to push, the actual aesthetically pleasing visual aspect of these sensors. Every one of our room sensors also has what we call a low wall coupling factor. So I include this wall coupling factor feature towards the end of the presentation as well, which I'll go into details. But basically what that means is that the sensor does not absorb too much temperature from the wall itself, which in turn makes it more accurate for the actual people within the room. All right, so jumping over to the next group here would be our Setpoint sensors. So these are the exact same thing as the previous sensors I spoke about when it comes to design, accuracy, and the manual override as well, except of course these have an added temperature Setpoint dial. This Setpoint dial has a resistive output itself, so it gets wired into your BMS system, and your BMS system will be able to read that resistance output, and you can control based on however your application needs. Again, these have the same sleek and slim design. They're the same thickness as the previous sensors, of course, with just the added width with the actual Setpoint dial itself. And as mentioned before, every single one of these sensors also comes with this manual override button as standard. All right, so moving on to our third category here, which is our active units. So we have 3 main part numbers here. I guess technically 6 part numbers if you incorporate the non-logoed units as well. So these units have a temperature. One part number measures only temperature. One part number measures temperature and humidity, and the third part number measures temperature, humidity, and CO2 all within the same device. Through NFC, right, as you can kind of see here at the bottom right picture, all of the outputs are independently selectable. So you could choose anywhere at 0 to 5 volts, 0 to 10 volts, 2 to 10 volts, MP bus, and they're all independent of each other. So you can go into the app, and for example, if you have the temperature and humidity sensor, you could do a 0 to 5 volt temperature output, and you could also have an MP bus humidity output. They're all independent of each other. These sensors also incorporate a digital auxiliary input. So these are used differently based on different applications, but one of the biggest applications that we see really is occupancy detection. So if you have an occupancy detector wired into the sensor itself, you could have somebody walk into the room, your occupancy sensor will send a signal to the room sensor to wake it up, which will also speak to the BMS system as well. These are also used a lot of times with window alarms and stuff like that. If a window's open, it'll send a signal to the BMS system for you. Through the NFC app as well, with our active sensors, the temperature and CO2 range are fully selectable. In the data sheets that are included in this webinar, you can see the measurement ranges. The temperature range is 32 degrees F up to, I believe, 120 F, and you could completely customize that range. CO2 is the same way, fully customizable, 0 to 2000 ppm. On the humidity side, if you're familiar with our BACnet versions or any of our other active versions for the duct and pipe sensors, our humidity sensors are actually selectable through, you could choose between relative humidity and dew point. And then again, this is all through the actual NFC app itself. On the app, you can monitor both values, but you're only going to have to be able to choose whether it's relative humidity or dew point when it comes to sending a signal to the BMS system itself. Again, these have been designed trying to be some of the slimmest sensors on the market. So with our CO2 sensor, just inherently, it's a little bit bigger based on the actual module itself, but it still is one of the slimmest CO2 sensors on the market when it comes to room sensors themselves. Also incorporated within the sensor on the inside is another, we call it a rugged PC board cover plate. It's basically a plastic cover that covers the entire PC board itself. Just inherently the technology to measure CO2, we have to have some sort of opening to allow air to come into the sensor itself. This added layer of protection basically protects against damage, against dust, vibration, if there's any cleaning agents in the air, stuff like that. So we have this added PC board cover plate as standard on all of our active sensors as well. All right, NFC wise. So NFC, if you're not too familiar with it, basically you could download an app on your iPhone or on your Android, through the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, and all you have to do is take this Belimo Assistant app and touch the room sensor itself. Once that room sensor is touched, it'll initiate a pairing sequence, and once it's paired, you'll be able to open up all the parameters of the room sensor itself. So we use this app for setup, commissioning, and troubleshooting. On the setup side, again, you could select all of your outputs. Commissioning, you could verify all the signals being sent versus the actual measured values that you're able to see in the app. And when it comes to troubleshooting, you're also able to look at all the voltages coming in, voltages in, voltage out, your actual measurement values, things of that nature. It is a very, very, very useful tool that really helps with installation and commissioning. Again, the outputs that you're able to select through the NFC app, 0 to 5 volt, 0 to 10 volt, 2 to 10 volt, or MP bus right now. And again, you have fully selectable temperature ranges on the temperature and CO2 side, and you could choose between outputs of relative humidity or dew point on the humidity side of things. All right, so wall coupling factor, I've mentioned this a few times. If you could see in the picture here that the actual photo that I've taken with the copper plate there, that's an image of the outer, the outer shell of our room sensor. That copper plate is the actual temperature sensor itself. If you notice, that copper plate is adhered to the back of the outermost piece of plastic, I guess you could say, in our sensor itself. So what that does is that adds distance between the sensor and the wall that it's installed on. A lot of times these sensors get installed, or just room sensors in general, get installed on electrical boxes that are open to the wall behind it. Within that wall itself, that wall cavity, there's a lot of cold drafts that kind of move in and out, or it could be a warm draft as well, depending on the location. So we really wanted to eliminate this effect on the temperature readings, right? So we're more focused on the reading inside the room as opposed to the reading behind the wall. So by incorporating this temperature sensing element further away from the wall, in turn, it makes our sensors more accurate for the people actually occupying the room we're trying to measure. All right, so if you're familiar with our duct and pipe assortment of sensors, we incorporate loads of features when it comes to ease of installation and the time it takes to actually install our sensors. I've included 4 pictures here, kind of going through the installation setup. So firstly, the biggest thing here, our terminal blocks are spring-loaded, just like our duct and pipe assortment. And also, if you notice on that first picture on the left here, this terminal block is actually mounted on the plastic backplate. It's physically separated from the PC board, as you can see the open pins there. So when you install the sensor onto the wall, you're able to actually pull the wires through, and since the terminal block is facing outwards, it's much easier to install the wires into the sensor itself. Once you get all of your sensors installed, as you look through the next 2 pictures here, you can then pop that terminal plate off the mounting plate, the terminal block, and slide it over the pins, which is shown in the 4th picture here on the right, and it makes it much easier to wire and install while you're going through this first initial installation. So basically, in combination, by having our terminal block spring loaded as well, combining with the NFC configuration for installation, we're able to save loads of time when it comes to installing and commissioning. So these really, especially with new building projects, as building projects get bigger, time savings really does save money down the road, especially it saves money exponentially as building projects get bigger and bigger. All right, so going into what we're going to be releasing here in the near future, so we have a Belimo display app, which is also going to be NFC. As you've noticed, this first grouping of sensors does not have a display. So what we'll be doing is we'll be basically having the same Belimo Assistant app NFC capabilities, but we're adding another layer that's going to act as a display for the sensor itself. So here's a quick image of the display, what it would look like through this virtual room operating unit app. We also have coming out a stainless steel flush mount room sensor. So these are temperature sensors basically where in applications or rooms where you don't want anyone to tamper with what's on the wall. Hospitals, schools, daycares, hotels, prisons, you name it. This is in process. We'll be releasing these, and then we'll definitely make sure you guys get the documentation needed once these are fully released. So then the next major release when it comes to room sensors is going to be our next phase, which is actually we're going to call phase 1 of the room sensors. These are going to be coming out in 2021 next year, and they will have full LCD touch screen capabilities. And we're also going to be incorporating BACnet communication protocol into the sensors as well. All right, so one quick slide here to kind of sum everything up. With our multi-sensors, you do get an added edge with Belimo's products. The multi-sensor, again, has a CO2 humidity and temperature measurement capability. On the CO2 side, the CO2 sensor itself is a dual channel sensor, which means that, typically in the in the field, CO2 sensors drift over time. With our dual channel technology, the sensor itself is continuously self-calibrating. So this eliminates the need to bring in any outside or third-party people to come in and calibrate. Your sensors are always running, always operating, and always calibrating themselves throughout their lifespan. Again, on the humidity side, you have a selectable output between relative humidity and dew point, both of which can be monitored through the NFC app as well. And these are plus or minus 2 or 3%, depending on which part number you guys choose. Temperature-wise, fully customizable temperature range on this active model through NFC, and again, selectable outputs, 0 to 5 volt, 10 volt, 2 to 10, and MP bus, all through this NFC app. All right, so for those of you that aren't too familiar with our other product range, I wanted to incorporate a quick slide here. So we have temperature sensors, humidity sensors, air quality, pressure, and flow sensors. We've got combinations on the air quality side of temperature and humidity and VOCs as well. Flow sensors, we have flow sensors with 1/2-inch pipe size up to 6-inch pipe size. And of course, if you're familiar with working with Belimo in general, we have an incredible support class. Our quality team is great. Our tech support is great. We have great warranty. So it really is just, we have the rest of this product range available for you guys. If you have any other questions on this, feel free to reach out. In general, our other product line, the rest of our product range, I guess I could say, we've got loads of features. The orange boxes, they're all NEMA 4X rated as standard. Every one of these orange boxes has a snap-on cover. It's a toolless design. Again, ease of installation is a really big push for us. Output-wise, BACnet, Modbus, of course, we've got the passives, we've got the current output, we've got the voltage output. And again, most of our sensors as well, a lot of them have different self-calibrating features. And then most of our sensors also have field selectable temperature ranges to kind of help with customer selection and inventory, things of that nature. So this about sums it up. Let's see, looking at 20 minutes here. We've got a question and answer session here. If I can't directly answer your question on the line, again, I have a printout of everything that's typed in, so I'll be sure to reach out to you guys as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Before we move on to questions, please remember to follow Belimo on social media to keep informed about what's happening. And I do invite you again to please type any questions into the question box down in the bottom right-hand corner, and Eddie will try to answer them for you. Again, if you think of any questions after today's webinar, you can certainly email Eddie directly or email to me, training@us.belimo.com, and we will get your answers and respond to you via email. So let's take a look at some of the questions that are coming in. Excuse me. Okay, let's see. Is there an option for a display?
So display option, we do have this new app coming out, this Belimo Room Operating Unit app, the VROU app. So this can be used as a display until our next phase of sensors comes out. This next phase in 2021 will incorporate a display.
Okay, what can the auxiliary input be used for?
So that kind of depends on the application itself. There's many uses for it. The two biggest uses that we do see in the field though are definitely a window alarm. If a window's open, of course you don't want to condition that air, or occupancy detector. As somebody walks into the room, it can kind of wake the BMS system up.
Okay, what does the manual override button do exactly?
All right, so the manual override button shorts out one of the temperature or the thermistor resistance on the device itself. So it basically sends a signal to the BMS system, letting the BMS system know that someone is in that room. So again, a lot of BMS systems, especially with hotels, things like that, some zones when they're not occupied, of course, you don't want the rooms to be conditioned. So if somebody walks into one of these rooms and it's during the standby time period, they could hit the button on the room sensor and wake the system up.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. What is the warranty on the CO2 and humidity room sensors?
5-year warranty is across our entire sensors product range. That goes for pipe and duct as well.
Okay. How long does the manual override last once the button is pushed?
So that depends on the BMS itself. That's all customizable through the BMS, and it gets programmed based on the application.
Okay. Does the NFC capability include security protocols, or can anyone with a cell phone access the parameters?
Yep, so it's basically password protected. So if you have your maintenance manager or whatever, they could of course set that password or give that password out to whoever they want to configure the sensor.
Okay, hold on, I have a couple more coming in. What is the expected life cycle of the CO2 sensor?
That's a good question. Off the top of my head, I do not know. I will say it does depend on the application. I guess in general, we say the component's 15 years, but of course, if you're in a harsh environment, that kind of gets skewed a little bit. But I can get back to you with more details on that. In general, I'd say 15 years.
Okay. Can these room sensors be installed on a standard electrical box?
Yes, the room sensors have been designed around the standard electrical box for the American region. Yep, which I believe is
Okay.
4x2. Yep.
For cell phones that have no NFC, is there a workaround to use the app?
I do not believe so. We do have a Bluetooth dongle which could probably use on cell phones that don't have NFC capabilities. But I could also reach out to you after this just to give you some more definition on that.
Okay. Can we attach display on water flow sensors?
On the water flow sensors, right now you could probably do a remote display. Let me get back to you on that. I'll have to kind of look into that, give you some options there. But yeah, let me get back to you. I've got your email and the question on that one.
Okay. One more question. Do you require a dongle for an iPhone?
So that's a good question. Right now, actually, iPhones do not need a dongle for the room sensors. That's been an issue with just Apple in general. That's not a third-party issue. So with the new updates of the iPhones, Apple's actually released the NFC capabilities. So we do not need a dongle.
Okay. Well, that's the questions for now. Again, if Eddie
Cool.
has not gotten to any of the questions that you had, we can certainly answer them via email. And once again, thank you all so much for attending today's webinar. I'd also like to thank our presenter, Eddie Kelly. And please join us for our next webinar, which will be on April 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and the topic will be Belimo's Room Zone Comfort Devices. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.